Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome back to the spring campaign for Arkham Horror, the card game. We ended Pandemic Month in Northrend last week, so now it's time to start the spring campaign back in Arkham. We're running with Night of the Zealot for the spring campaign, and I'm going to do a little bit more of a learning campaign. We're starting off with the first scenario, The Gathering. Let's start by setting the scene for both the campaign and the first scenario.
Night of the Zealot intro. The Ghoul's Hunger. Friday, September 18th, 1925. Arkham, Massachusetts. It is the end of a long and abnormally hot summer. The first hints of autumn beckon, but a heavy heat persists, relentless. A silent, unspoken anger grips the town. Tempers are short, and in the last week alone there have been numerous reports of townspeople coming to heated, violent blows with one another over simple misunderstandings. And now, a call from James Hankerson. He claims to have found a dismembered body in his barn. Blaming the weather would be too easy. There is something wrong with this town, and not a whole lot this old soothsayer can do to stop the slide. My auguries indicate a small group of investigators will soon take note of these strange happenings and set forth to make things right. I'll be watching their progress, but I won't be holding my breath. Part 1, The Gathering. You and your partners have been investigating strange events taking place in your home city of Arkham, Massachusetts. Over the past few weeks, several townspeople have mysteriously gone missing. Recently, their corpses turned up in the woods, savage and half-eaten. The police and newspapers have stated that wild animals are responsible, but you believe there is something else going on. You are gathered together at the lead investigator's home to discuss these bizarre events.
So for those of you wondering, because I actually did technically read these, but what I've done with a lot of the story, and I haven't done it yet for the newest campaign, is I've actually pre-recorded me reading everything out. That way I don't have to read everything every single time my group gets together to run a campaign of Arkham Horror, the card game. I usually serve as our group's narrator, so I just decided to record, like I said, I just decided to record the story, and then when we're ready to set the scene, play the recordings so that we're all ready to go. As I started the YouTube channel, I realized, hey, I can actually use those recordings as well. So the rest, as they say, is history. But that slight rambling aside, let's go ahead and remind everyone of what the tarot reading is. So the tarot cards, as I mentioned in the campaign intro, actually came out with Return to the Circle Undone. And the way you're able to tell what side you're on is if you can read the card name or not. For the Magician 1, that's going to be our good card this week. So each investigator begins the game with 3 additional resources. You normally begin a game of Arkham Horror, the card game, with 5 resources. So instead we'll be beginning with 8 resources for the first turn. If we'd been on the bad side of that turn, we'd have started with 2 and been unable to gain resources on our first turn. Then on the bad side, we have the Empress 3. If you can see, the card name is upside down, so we're on the bad side. During the first agility test each investigator performs each round, they get -1 agility. Now, under normal circumstances, we don't want to be performing agility tests to begin with, as both of our ladies have a base agility of 2. So that won't be great for them, but something we do need to keep in mind. As far as our lead investigator is concerned, we actually have the ability to change that for each scenario of the campaign. We're going to start with Daisy as our lead investigator, so let's take a look at her opening hand first. We'll take a look at an event that I'm probably going to be a little bit happier to see later. I've got a plan. Costs 3 resources to play. You get a lore and a combat on commit. Fight, using lore. You deal +1 damage for this attack for each clue you have to a max of +3 damage. Then we have Eureka, which is a skill you can only commit this to a test. You get a will, lore, or an agility on commit. If the skill test is successful, the investigator performing this test searches the top 3 cards of his or her deck for a card, draws it, and shuffles his or her deck. So if Daisy were to give this to Zoe on a test, and Zoe passed, Zoe would be the one who would get to search her deck. Then we've got 3 assets. First up, we've got St. Hubert's Key, Cleansing Fire. It's got the star icon next to it, so what that means is only 1 copy of this can be in play for any given investigator. Costs 4 resources to play, will on commit. You get +1 will, +1 lore, and -2 sanity. And as a reaction, when you'd be defeated by horror, discard St. Hubert's Key, immediately heal 2 horror. And by that slot, it means it takes up the accessory slot. Then we've got Shriveling, costs 3 resources to play, combat on commit. Uses 4 charges. As an action, she can spend a charge to fight using will instead of combat and deal +1 damage. But if we reveal a bad symbol of some kind, take 1 horror. Takes up an arcane slot, which is what that icon is. And finally, Daisy's Tote Bag. Costs 2 to play, will, lore, wildcard on commit. Daisy Walker deck only. You have 2 additional hand slots which can only be used to hold tome assets. Now, with a hand like that, Daisy's special ability is not going to be particularly relevant right now because we don't have any tomes in hand to begin with. Then we get to look at Zoe's opening hand. I'm mostly happy. As far as the initial hand is concerned, I'm not completely happy with Daisy's, but it's serviceable. Zoe's I'd be a lot happier with if there was 1 other card in here. So first up, we'll take a look at our assets. We've got a Beat Cop for 4 resources. Combat if you commit this. You get +1 combat. You can, as an action, discard Beat Cop to deal 1 damage to an enemy at your location. 2 health and 2 sanity on soak. Takes up an ally slot. So if Zoe were to take damage or horror, she could assign it to Beat Cop, basically using it as a human meat shield. Then we've got the first of her weapons in her hand. The Enchanted Blade for 3 resources. Combat on commit, uses 3 charges. As an action to fight, you get +1 combat for the attack. As an additional cost to initiate this ability, you may spend 1 charge to empower the blade. If you do, you get +1 combat and deal +1 damage for the attack. Takes up a hand and an arcane slot. Now, this card's a little bit unique because it's actually a multi-class card. So, just as a quick aside on this card, technically this card could fall into one of Zoe's 2 deck building restrictions. It could fall either into her Guardian cards or her up to 5 level 0 cards from any class. The rule when a card interacts with more than 1 deck building restriction is it will always interact with the less restrictive of the 2. So in this case, it'll fall into the Guardian and it won't count toward one of her 5 out-of-class cards. Then we have another weapon in her hand. The Machete for 3 resources. Combat on commit. As an action, fight. You get +1 combat for this attack. If the attacked enemy is the only enemy engaged with you, this attack deals +1 damage. Then we have a couple of events in her hand. First up, we have Glory. 1 cost to play, 2 lore if you commit it. Fast, play after you defeat an enemy, draw 2 cards. And Emergency Cash, which costs 0 resources, gain 3. Alright, so that all balances out there. Now let's take a look at the Act and Agenda decks. So our first agenda, what's going on? It's late at night, you're holed up in your study, researching the bloody disappearances that have been taking place in the region. A few hours into your research, you hear the sound of strange chanting coming from your parlor down the hall. At the same time, you hear dirt churning, as if something were digging beneath the floor. We need 3 Doom to advance, and we'll put 1 up at the start of each Mythos phase, but I'll detail that when we get into our first Mythos phase. Act 1A, Trapped. As you leap to investigate, the door to your study vanishes before your eyes, leaving behind only solid wall. You're trapped inside your study until you can find another way out. And we need 2 per investigator clues to advance. That's what that extra icon is. It's Let me see if I can zoom in on it a little bit more. So if you can see that hat symbol, anytime you see that in the course of the game, that's what that symbol means. That's the per investigator symbol. Now, before Daisy and Zoe move over to the map, I know at least one of my subscribers is planning to play along with this campaign, and you're very much welcome to, and anybody who's watching this video is welcome to play along with this campaign. Whether you take your own decks or you take mine will always be linked in the description down below. I think the best way to play along with this campaign is probably to do your own actions and then take my Mythos cards as they come up. So, I think that's probably the best way to do it, but with that slight comment, now Daisy and Zoe will move over to the map, so let's meet them over there. Right now we only have the one location in the study, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. You've been investigating the strange events occurring in Arkham for several days now. Your desk is covered in newspaper articles, police reports, and witness accounts. This will flip into Shroud of 2, 4 clues. It's almost 2 per investigator, so 2 times 2 is 4. Almost like they set it up this way or something. The door to your study has vanished. So we'll get the 4 clues for that. As you can see, I'll point this out, but I'm actually not using the clues that came with the game. I'm actually using these clues actually come from Team Covenant, and a link to all the special components I use will be in the description down below. So these are actually a very durable plastic, just because the mountain of clues I have are probably going to go through abuse, and I just like something that pops a little more, but that's my opinion. Similarly, and we'll be seeing a lot of these, the Doom I use also comes from Team Covenant, so it's actually really cool, because this flips into a 1 and a 2. So we'll be seeing all of that. Daisy, once again, is our lead investigator, so let's actually start off the scenario with her, and we'll start back down at her play area. So on your turn, you can take 3 actions, and you can do one of the following with an action. You can investigate your location. You can move to a connecting location, but as you saw, we only have the one location out right now. You can draw, which will be to draw a card from the deck. You can take a resource, which is just like it sounds, gain 1 resource. Play an asset or event card from your hand. You can activate an action-controlled ability on a card with that cost you control. So just to show you what they're talking about there, so if we had Shriveling in play, we could use that. You could use that action ability off of Shriveling, and we can do that. And the only things we're limited by on actions like that are the charges or whatever you have on there, and the number of actions you have in a turn. You can fight an enemy at your location, but this being the first turn of the game, for the most part, there are no enemies in play. There are some scenarios that will start with enemies in play. This scenario is not one of them. You can engage an enemy at your location. So, say Zoe was engaged with an enemy and Daisy wanted to engage it. She would take an action to engage that enemy away from Zoe. It'll be more likely that we're going in the reverse direction, where Daisy ends up with an enemy and Zoe is engaged, and Zoe wants to engage with it. But there are situations where we'll want to have Daisy draw the engagement. Or we can attempt to evade an enemy at your location. I'll explain more about those actions, about the fight, and I'll explain more about fight and evade when those enemies actually come out of the encounter deck. Excuse me, I'm already talking a lot. But you can see on these mats as well that I've got mostly slots on here. So these special mats come from Board Game Solutions, and once again, their link will be in the description down below. So one other thing I would probably suggest, and I didn't mention this in my new buyer's guide, is to get action trackers of some kind. For starting in the game, it can be something as simple as dice, or what I use, actually I've got 2 sets of these, but I use one of them for a different thing. So I actually use these action trackers from Orbits, which are the class icon when an action hasn't been taken or flipped over when they have. The coin capsules are, I think, 26 millimeter, which might be a little bit big because I've got the chaos tokens wrapped in those as well. The board and the resource tokens, along with what we'll also see as health, are also from Team Covenant. Now, I do have these different action trackers as well. These are from LCG tokens, these brass-backed tokens. I don't use these for action trackers. What I actually use these for there are a lot of effects that on the map especially that will say limit once per turn, limit once per game, whatever. So what those are for is I can actually put those out on the relevant location to indicate which investigator has done them. So that's all those are for. But I think that's enough rambling on the bling and the turn front. So let's actually get into Daisy's first turn. So for action 1, I'll flip that over to indicate that the action's been taken. Then I'm going to spend 4 resources to play out, where is it? Her St. Hubert's Key. So that will give her +1 will, +1 lore, and -2 sanity. And when she's defeated by sanity, she'll discard it to heal 2 horror. That'll go in her accessory slot. Then action 2 will investigate. So Daisy's going to test against the location's shroud value, which in this case is 2. She's at 6, so she's base up 4. Now we'd have an opportunity to commit cards, but there's nothing in Daisy's hand right now that I particularly want to commit. And Zoe doesn't have anything that Zoe could commit, but she's going to keep her card. So Daisy's just going to investigate base up 4. So the way that will work is, hold on. Okay, never mind. I was getting a little bit nervous about the bag, but I think, hang on. I think I might be missing a token in here. I gotta double check this bag. Yes, I am actually. There should be a rune in here as well, which normally I keep the starting bag together, but I guess the rune came out I guess the rune came out in transit somewhere. So let me just grab an extra rune out of my mess of tokens. That's probably the one peril of having so many cores is I've got a lot of, it actually is kind of a good and here we go. It's kind of a good and a bad thing to have so many tokens, but okay, there's another skull. All right, so now that we've got the bag all straight, now we can carry on with the investigation. So Daisy is up 4 because she's at a lore of 6 right now to a shroud of 2. So we'll go into the bag, rattle it around, and then pull out a token. Then we'll modify this based on we'll modify Daisy's skill based on what comes out of here. A 0. So you would either add or subtract whatever comes out. If you pull a special symbol if you pull a symbol out of the bag, as we can see on the scenario card, the skull, cultist, and rune have special effects. The elder sign and the tentacle do as well. So Daisy will get the first clue off of the location. The 2 special tokens I want to talk about, where are they? Here we are the elder sign and the tentacle. We want to see the elder sign more than the tentacle. The tentacle basically just sets your skill to 0 and you auto-fail the test no matter what if that token comes out and is revealed. The elder sign usually reflects on being some good effect for your investigator. And that effect will vary from investigator to investigator. I'll give that a quick rattle just to mix up the bag. Then action 3, we'll run the investigation back. So once again, Daisy is up 4. We'll take that token. Another 0, so Daisy will actually get a second clue off of the location. And then that will be the end of Daisy's turn. I'll flip her over. So just to show off the mini cards, because I really like these as activation tokens, to the point where I've got a set of them that I use in Elder Sign for investigators who are in the card game, because they're colored on this side to indicate that an investigator's gone, that hasn't gone for the round yet. Black and white to indicate that they have been activated. So that's actually really handy in my opinion. And like I said, I use them in Elder Sign as well for the same reason. But that's it for Daisy's turn. Let's go over to Zoe. Zoe is actually feeling kind of bored right now with nothing to kill. So for 2 actions, I'm going to shortcut this a little bit. I'm going to take 2 actions because I'm going to end up spending 7 resources to play out 2 assets. So the first asset I'm going to play out is... I'm going to play out her Enchanted Blade first. So we saw this earlier. It's basically the machete, but I can spend a charge to empower it and get +1 damage no matter what. So I'll put that in her hand slot. It also takes up an arcane slot because of the arcane symbol on the bottom. So we'll get the 3 charges for that. And once again, I've got charge tokens for those. Those are also from LCG tokens off of Etsy. Then the second action is going to be playing her Beat Cop out, so that'll give her a base combat of 5. Goes in her ally slot. Then for action 3, we'll go ahead and play out Emergency Cash to give Zoe 3 of those resources back. And then that is all 3 of Zoe's actions. That will do it for the investigation phase. We're going to blow through our first enemy phase because we have no enemies in play right now. I'll explain more about how the enemy phase will actually work when we actually have an enemy to deal with. So with that, I'll go ahead and reset everything. I'm kind of shortcutting a little bit. The official sequence, I think, is a little different than what I'm doing, but I'm kind of shortcutting. I'm kind of moving around the upkeep phase for the sake of the video, but we're actually going to move back up top for the upkeep phase. Alright, so in the upkeep phase, you actually do reset your actions, which I was doing first as I was getting ready to move up top. You'd ready anything you've exhausted during the course of the turn. So each investigator draws a card and gains a resource, but I usually do resources first. So Daisy gains... Actually, both of them will gain 1 resource and go to 5. Daisy will draw. Read the signs. Costs 2 to play. Lore and will on commit. Investigate plus will for your... Add your will value to your skill value for this investigation. You may ignore any effect or keyword on your location which would trigger during the investigation. If you succeed, discover 1 additional clue at your location. Now, one clarification to make here is if you're playing along with my decks, adding will to the skill value doesn't change the fact that it's still an investigate. So you couldn't commit a card for the... You wouldn't be able to commit a card for the will icon to this test. You'd still only be able to commit lore. But that can come in handy with a card that Daisy has in her deck. Zoe will then draw. Vicious Blow. This I'm happier to see. Combat on commit is a skill that we can only commit. If the skill test is successful during an attack, this attack deals +1 damage. I'll go through the flavor text when I actually play it out. Now we're going to go into the Mythos phase. So we start off the Mythos phase by putting a Doom on the agenda, which will bring us up to 1. Remember, we need 3 to advance. So we check the Doom threshold, but again, we're only at 1 Doom of 3. So now each investigator will draw a card, so Daisy will draw. A Ghoul minion. 2's across the board, so 2 combat, 2 health, 2 evade value. Humanoid monster ghoul. It was a colossal and nameless blasphemy with glaring red eyes, and it held in bony claws a thing that had been a man, gnawing at the head as a child nibbles at a stick of candy. H.P. Lovecraft, Pickman's model. Does 1 damage and 1 sanity on attack. I'm going to explain the evade action because we'll actually be taking the combat. We'll actually get to see how a fight works. So when you're trying to evade, you actually test your agility against the evade value, similar to how we did in an investigation earlier. If the agility test ends up being successful, you'll actually evade the enemy and break the engagement with that enemy. But it will end up, unless engaged directions indicate otherwise, enemies will always engage the investigator who drew the enemy. So Zoe will draw a ghoul minion of her own. Delightful. Okay, so that's it for the Mythos phase. We actually skipped this Mythos phase during the first round of the game because setting everything up takes the place of the Mythos phase. So just to kind of explain that. So the round structure is actually a little bit confusing for anybody who's played anything else in the Arkham Horror files, where you might be used to having the Mythos phase at the end of the round. Instead, here it's at the start of the round, so you do need to bear that in mind. But with that slight ramble aside, the Mythos phase is over. We're in the investigation phase now, and we can change the order that the investigators go in. So with that, we'll actually drop down to Zoe first, and we'll drop into her play area. Because of Zoe's reaction ability, I did almost forget, but she should gain a resource and go up to 6. So action 1, Zoe's actually going to attack the ghoul minion with the enchanted blade. So she's going to use the action ability on her enchanted blade to fight, getting +1 combat for the attack. As an additional cost to initiate this ability, you may spend 1 charge to empower the blade, which she will. If she does, she gets another +1 combat and deals +1 damage for the attack. So that brings Zoe up to 4, 5, 6 to 2. It's probably overkill. Zoe's up 4 right now, but I'm more interested in the extra damage to be able to take it out in one shot. So that's Zoe's first action, which, let's go ahead and draw the token. Actually, hold on. Zoe is at 4, 5, 6, 7. She's actually up 5. I forgot about the +1 from the beat comp. Alright, coming out of the bag. The Elder Sign. So let's take a look at Zoe's Elder Sign. If I can ever get this, here we go. Alright, so Zoe's Elder Sign is +1. If the skill test is successful during an attack, and it is, that attack deals +1 damage. So this is an attack, which means Zoe very much obliterates the ghoul minion. So that is defeated. And then we do have an open player window during a combat action, which Zoe will spend 1 resource to play Glory. So play this after you defeat an enemy, draw 2 cards. Ding, ding, ding! How fitting. That actually comes out of Nathaniel Cho's starter deck, but that's very handy. 2 cards, not 3. So card 1 for Zoe is Guts. 2 will on commit, max 1 committed per skill test. If the skill test is successful, draw 1 card. So this is slightly different from Eureka that Daisy has in her hand, where no matter who Zoe commits this to, Zoe will get to draw the card if the test is successful. And then card 2 is another copy of Guts. Alright, so action 2. One consideration to make is that friendly fire is a thing in this game. So generally I try to engage an enemy. Generally I would try to engage an enemy off of Daisy, especially Daisy being a 5 health investigator. But if Zoe attacks with the enchanted blade again and spends the charge, she'll be base up 5 trying to take it out. Where the only thing that would fail her there is the tentacles. So I think for action 2, I will run that back and I'll empower the blade again to try to take out that ghoul minion. So once again, Zoe's up 5. So he's up 5, trying to do 2 damage. The Elder Sign once again. I swear, I do not pull the Elder Sign this often, and you heard me rattle the tokens around the bag. But I'm not going to complain because the ghoul minion is once again dead. And then for action 3, we're already down 2 charges on the blade, so I think Zoe's going to think ahead a little bit and spend 3 resources to play out her replacement machete. That way we have another weapon we can use for a guaranteed 2 damage when the enchanted blade runs out. So that was all 3 of Zoe's actions, which means I'll flip her over at the map. And then Daisy's turn will take us back down to her play area. There is an argument to be made for using a read the signs right here. The problem with that argument, though, actually there are 2 problems with that argument. One of them is going to involve a little bit of metagaming. So, right now, the study's a Shroud of 2. Daisy is base up 4. And I know, again, this is metagaming from running this campaign so many times. I know there are higher Shroud locations coming in the later parts of this scenario, so I'm not going to bother with Read the Signs. Action 1, Daisy is going to investigate, though. As I mentioned, she's base up 4. Tentacle touched. That's usually more like how my luck goes in this game. Action 2 will run the investigation back. Once again, base up 4. A 0 gets Daisy a 3rd clue. I suppose it's better to pull the tentacle on a Daisy investigation than when Zoe was trying to attack the ghoul minion engaged with Daisy, because Daisy would have taken the 2 damage from that attack. Would have put her down to 3 health left, which was not a place I wanted her to be. Then action 3 will run the investigation back once again, still up 4. A -1, which Daisy was starting at a 6 to a 2. -1 brings her down to 5, which is her base lore, but it is enough to get her the clue, the last clue off of the location. Now, we do have the option to spend the clues now to advance, because it just says spend 4 clues. So you can spend those clues, unless a direction says otherwise, you can spend the clues anytime you have them, but I'm going to sit tight on them and draw 1 more set of Mythos cards in this current game state, because I don't want something crazy to happen. And again, that's partly a metagaming thing. So that will do it for Daisy. That will do it for the investigation phase. We'll blow through another enemy phase since Zoe managed to kill both of our enemies. And we'll flip our ladies back over, reset their actions, and we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. Daisy gains 1 resource and goes to 6. Zoe gains 1 resource and goes to 3. Daisy draws. Another St. Hubert's key. So if we were to lose the first one, we could use this. So this is probably going to be a will commit at some point. Zoe draws. Prepared for the worst. Search the top 1 cost to play. Lore and combat on commit. Search the top 9 cards of your deck for a weapon asset and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. I could potentially use that to discard the enchanted blade through slot pressure. So Zoe right now has 2 hands worth of items. If I go to play another hand slot, I would have to discard one of those items, either the enchanted blade or the machete, to be able to play that out. But getting a little bit ahead of myself there. So as we move into the Mythos phase, Doom on the agenda flips up to 2, and then Daisy draws. Frozen in Fear, Revelation. So whenever it's drawn, you have to do something with it. And the weaknesses will all have a revelation clause on them as well. Put Frozen in Fear into play in your threat area. The first time you perform one of the following actions, move, fight, or evade each round, it costs 1 additional action. Forced at the end of your turn, test will 3. If you succeed, discard Frozen in Fear. That's not too terribly bad, because right now Daisy's at a base will of 4, so she's already up 1. And then Zoe will draw. Grasping Hands, Revelation, test Agility 3. For each point you fail by, take 1 damage. Decaying Hands rise up from below and grasp and claw at your ankles. So unfortunately, this means the Empress 3 on the bad side will kick in. So Zoe is down 2. And do we have any agility we can commit? Since the two of them are together, Daisy could commit a card to Zoe, and I think she will. I think Daisy will give Zoe Eureka to get her up to even. Actually, no, that still leaves her down 1. Never mind that plan. So Zoe's just going to take this one on the chin, being down 2. We're down 2, hoping for a pull, basically, is where we're at. -2, which brings Zoe's skill value down to 0. So Zoe ends up taking 3 damage. So we'll grab the health tokens. These are also from Team Covenant as part of the Investigator set. So double-sided into a 1 and a 2. So we'll put a 2 and a 1 on Zoe's player board, and to indicate the 3 damage she's taken. You put damage. I put damage on as I take it. So we do have an open player window coming out of the Mythos phase, during which Daisy will spend the 4 clues to advance our act. Now, that was kind of a calculated gamble, waiting to spend the clues until after the Mythos phase. Partly from metagaming, because I know there's a very dangerous set in here, and I'm sure it's going to come up at some point. Trapped. So we advance that. The door on the floor. You notice that the edges of your newly purchased rug are tattered and mud-stained. Finding this odd, you shift the furniture aside and pull back the rug. To your surprise, you see the door leading out of your study. You slowly turn the knob and the door swings open, revealing your hallway below. You jump through the doorway, landing on your feet on soft dirt. The door to the study slams shut above you. The smell of burning wood fills the narrow hall, intermingled with the scent of rot and decay. Put into play the set-aside hallway, cellar, attic, and parlor. Discard each enemy in the study. Place each enemy in the hallway. Remove the study from the game. I will actually go ahead and turn the camera off, and then when I turn the camera back on, we'll be back at the map to take a look at how the map has changed. So here's our new map. We've got the hallway, attic, cellar, and parlor. As you can see, I put connecting arrows. These are also from Orbits. We've got a 2-way connection and a 1-way connection. So both of these are actually 2-way connections, but we don't have a connection into the parlor, and I'll get into that in a minute. So first, let's take a look at the hallway. A moment of panic and disorientation strikes as you land upon the floor of the hallway. The world spins as if turned on its head, and this flips into... So this is the unrevealed side. When we have investigators in the location, we flip it to the revealed side. So we'll find... Shroud of 1, no clues. The walls of your house are splattered with mud, and your hardwood floor is gone, replaced with a dirt path. So the shroud value is over here. In this case, it's a 1. Clue value is over here, so no clues. So we leave that there. Then text that's about to become relevant is the parlor. The entrance to the parlor is blocked by a darkly glowing, unfathomable barrier. You cannot move into the parlor. You're unsure what would happen if you tried to cross the threshold of the strange barrier, but based on its extreme heat, you sure as hell don't want to try. That's also why I don't have a connecting arrow right there yet, because they're not connected. But let's take a look at Act 2A. The barrier. A glowing barrier blocks the path to your parlor. As you move toward it, intense heat forces you to back away. Picking up a handful of dirt, you toss it at the barrier and watch in horror as the dirt incinerates. Perhaps there's something in the cellar or attic that can help. Objective. When the round ends, investigators in the hallway may, as a group, spend the requisite number of clues to advance, and we need 3 per or 6 investigators. So just for comparison purposes, okay, here we go. So Act 1A didn't specify an objective, which means we could spend the clues at any time. For this act, we have to spend them two things have to be true for us to be able to spend the clues, besides that we have the clues. 1, we have to be at the end of the round to do that, so after the upkeep phase. And 2, the investigators who have the clues to spend have to be in the hallway. So we do need to keep all of that in mind. So now we're back into the investigation phase, and I think we'll start off with Daisy, and we'll stay right here at the map. Daisy's going to move for her first action, but remember, because of Frozen in Fear, it actually costs Daisy 2 actions to move. So I'll move her into the cellar. The stairs leading down to your cellar are slick, and they glisten with a thin layer of ice. Uh-oh. This flips into a shroud of 4, 2 per investigator, or 4 clues. Forced. After you enter the cellar, take 1 damage, and I'll deal with that in a second. Your cellar seems to have been replaced with an underground network of icy tunnels and caverns. The cold chills you to the core. Victory 1. So we'll see that on enemies as well. But what the victory means is at the end of the scenario, we'll potentially earn experience for that we can use to upgrade the decks. And I'll explain more about how the upgrades go when we do the first upgrades video. For now, in more immediate concerns, we'll get the 4 clues out and put them on the cellar. That is a shroud of 4, huh? Well, I think in that case, I think that would be worth spending 2 resources to read the signs. So we get to add our will value to the skill value for the investigation. So that's actually a 4 plus 6 because of the St. Hubert's Key. So Daisy is at a 10 to 4. She's up 6 trying to discover 2 clues. A plus 1 brings Daisy's modified skill value up to 11 to 4, which is more than enough to pluck the first 2 clues off of the cellar. Now, for the end of Daisy's turn before we flip it over, we do have to test for Frozen in Fear. So that's a will 3. Right now, Daisy's base up 1, and I'm going to commit my extra St. Hubert's Key to go up 2, because remember, once I discard that, I'll have 2 sanity left. So Daisy is up 2. Tentacle touch. So Daisy is still frozen in fear. Which I actually don't completely mind that, because that means we're probably going to have Daisy work on getting those clues off of there if we can anyway. So that will do it for Daisy. Zoe isn't touching a lore of 4 down to anyway. So for action 1, we'll actually split them up and I'll move her up to the attic. The smell of rotten meat assaults your nostrils as you approach the attic stairs. This flips into Shroud of 1, 2 per, or 4 clues. Forced, after you enter the attic, take 1 horror, which I've got to get that for Daisy. The bloody carcass of a malformed beast swings from a meat hook chained to the ceiling. Blood drains slowly from the carcass, dripping into a small barrel. Once again, victory 1. So let me get the 4 clues out for that, and then I'll get then I'll get Daisy her damage and Zoe her horror. So 4 clues for that. All right. Damage for Daisy. And similar to Zoe, or similar to the damage, the horror tokens are double-sided. So we got a 1 on here and a 2, but we only need the 1 for Zoe. Action 2, Zoe's actually up 1, so she will go ahead and investigate. We'll pretend Zoe can do booky things, but at a shroud of 1, she might be able to. -1 actually does give Zoe a clue. Then action 3, we'll run the investigation back. -2 says Zoe doesn't get another clue this time, which is unfortunate but not completely unexpected. So we'll do it for the investigation phase. Once again, we blow through the enemy phase because we have no enemies in play. Zoe doesn't have any end of turn. I was just double checking that. So we'll flip them over, reset their actions, and then we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. Daisy gains 1 resource and goes to 5. Zoe gains 1 and goes to 4. Daisy draws. Dr. Milan Christopher, where has he been all game? 4 cost to play, lore on commit, and once again he's got the star icon, Professor of Entomology. You get +1 lore, and after you successfully investigate, gain 1 resource. I'll go through the flavor text when I actually play it. When I actually play him. Zoe draws. Another prepared for the worst, which will probably be commit fodder here. Mythos phase, so actually before we go into the Mythos phase, I do want to mention that we are at the end of the round now, so this is when we have to spend the clues to advance the second act. But since neither of our conditions are true, we don't have the 6 clues and we're not in the hallway. And it turns out, and it looks like our clues are probably going to be split between the 2 of them. So we're going to have to get both of them back to the hallway. But now is when we'd be able to spend the clues, but we don't have them. So now we go into the Mythos phase, which actually will advance our agenda because we'll put the 3rd doom up, and then we're at 3 to advance. A lapse in time. Your house continues to change before your very eyes. The walls have decayed, and the ground in many rooms has turned to dirt. It is almost as if you have been transported somewhere else entirely, although every now and again you recognize elements of your former home. The lead investigator must decide, choose 1. Either each investigator discards 1 card at random from his or her hand, or the lead investigator takes 2 horror. Daisy's at full sanity right now, so she is taking 2 horror. And besides, that vicious blow in Zoe's hand is going to be too important, so I want to protect that if I can. Let's take a look at our new agenda. Agenda 2A, Rise of the Ghouls. The floor beneath you is giving way, and you see a vast network of tunnels twisting into the darkness below. Shapes and silhouettes of strange creatures move swiftly through the tunnels, trying to find a way up. You probably don't want to be here when they do. Well, no kidding. 7 doom to advance that. So now we draw cards from the deck. Daisy draws. Another Frozen in Fear. You've got to be kidding me. So we're going to have to test for both of them. Yeah, she's going to have to test for both of those, it looks like. And I think... Okay, so I think that makes Move, Fight, or Evade now cost 3 actions for Daisy. So I'll have to take... Looks like we'll have to take 2 tests on that. And then Zoe will draw. Flesh Eater. Oh, this is... Okay, no, this is actually good right now. So spawns in the attic, which Zoe's in the... Yeah, Zoe's in the attic right now, so this will spawn on her. 4 combat, 4 health, 1 evade. Spawn in the attic. A monstrous creature feeds from the rotting carcass in the attic. 1 damage and 2 sanity on attack. Now, if this had said... I was so alarmed because if this had said spawn cellar, it would have been engaged with Daisy, and Daisy, I don't particularly want fighting this round. It's doable, but I'd rather not if I can avoid it, so that will engage with Zoe. So we're into the investigation phase now, and... okay, before we jump into that, I should mention that now the situation's changed with Zoe a little bit. So I didn't mention it earlier when I had the 2 ghoul minions out because Zoe just blew through them, but this is probably going to take Zoe a couple of actions to get rid of that flesh eater. So I should mention here that if you're engaged with an enemy, you can still take the actions like normal, but unless you take a fight, evade, parlay, or resign action, you will trigger an attack of opportunity. So the way it'll work on the timing front, Zoe's not going to do it because she's going to deal with that flesh eater, but the way the timing will work is you'll go to initiate the attack, then the action, the attack of opportunity action, basically. Then the enemy will make the attack of opportunity against you, then you'll get to do the action like normal. But like I said, Zoe's not going to be triggering an attack of opportunity here. Zoe does gain a resource, though, from her special ability and goes up to 5. Speaking of Zoe, let's drop down to Zoe in her play area. If I'm willing to throw everything at this, and I think I am really, I can probably take the Flesh Eater out here. So for action 1, I will have Zoe use the last charge of her Enchanted Blade, so giving her a +1 for the attack, which I'm spending the last charge as well to give her another +1, so she's at 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'll commit Zoe's Vicious Blow to bring her to 8 and doing 3 damage if she passes. -2 means, so Zoe was at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 4. So Zoe was up 4, -2 brings her down to 6, which means she is successful on the attack, so she'll deal 3 damage to the Flesh Eater, and then as a fast action, I will discard the Beat Cop to do the 4th damage to it, which means that's taken out, so instead of going to the discard pile like the Ghoul Minions did earlier, because it's got Victory 1 on it, we'll actually put that in the victory display, and then that's a guaranteed experience that we'll earn. Let's see, for action 2... do I want to just investigate and keep working on getting those clues? For action 2, we do have the machete now, so I'm bit happier to see that. I think action 2, we will go ahead and keep investigating. So we're up 1, and I'll commit one of the prepared for the worsts to go up 2. -2 gives her the clue, so gives her a clue, so that was a good plan. Then action 3, I think we'll run it back down to the committing prepared for the worst. Because I'm pretty happy with the machete right now. And metagaming a little bit, there aren't that many enemies left anyway. So we're up 2. Another -2, but that gives Zoe another clue off of the attic. So that will do it for Zoe. Let's move down to Daisy in her play area. Action 1 for Daisy is going to be to spend 4 resources to play out her old friend, Dr. Milan Christopher, Professor of Entomology. While I pray that this nightmare is just a singular abomination, I must admit that I am exhilarated by the possibility that this is but one specimen of a new genus. 1 health, 2 sanity on soak takes the ally slots. That brings Daisy to a base lore of 5, 6, 7. To 4, she's up 3, so action 2 will be to investigate. Skull, so we have to go to the scenario card and see what this does. So Skull is minus X, where X is the total number of ghoul enemies at your location, which is exactly 0, so Daisy will get another clue from that, along with a resource thanks to Milan. And then action 3, we'll run that back, and we'll run it back still at 3. +1 actually brings her up to 8 to 4, so Daisy gets the clue and another resource from Milan. So the seller will actually go into the victory display at the end of the scenario. But Daisy is at the end of her turn, so we've got to test for Frozen in Fear twice. So we'll test for this one first, I guess. Daisy's base up 1. Do I have any will I can commit to this? If I want to use the tote bag, maybe. Actually, we'll have her use... We'll have her use Eureka. So we're up... So that'll put her up 2. -2 passes, so Daisy gets to discard 1 of her Frozen in Fear. And then we'll go into, we'll look at the top 3 cards of Daisy's deck for a card. So first up we'll find Drawn to the Flame, which I probably don't need. 0 cost to play, Lore and Will on Commit. Draw the top card of the encounter deck, then discover 2 clues at your location. I don't think we'll need that. Card 2. Higher Education, 0 cost to play, Lore and Will on Commit. While you have 5 or more cards in hand, it gains as a fast action, spend 1 resource to get either +1 Will or Lore for the test. That would bring Daisy up to 4 cards, so that might not be useful. And another copy of Shriveling, which... on a slight effect of metagame, so... This is a tough one. I think we're going to take... I think we're going to take another Shriveling, actually. So we'll go ahead and give this a quick shuffle. Alright, so the first Frozen in Fear is gone. Second one, I'm going to keep that for later. So we'll just test up 1 on the second Frozen in Fear. Tentacle touched once again, so Daisy's still somewhat Frozen in Fear. But anyway, that will do it for Daisy. That will do it for the investigation phase. Enemy phase, once again, no enemies in play because Zoe killed our only enemy. So we'll go ahead and reset everything. Reset our actions. And then we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. Daisy will gain 1 resource and go to 4. Zoe will gain 1 and go to 6. Daisy will draw. Research Librarian. Reaction: after it enters play, search your deck for a tome asset and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. Zoe draws. Tetsuo Mori. Too noble for his own good. 3 cost to play, lore on commit. Tetsuo Mori may be assigned damage and or horror dealt to other investigators at your location. As a reaction, after he's defeated, choose an investigator at your location. That investigator searches either their discard pile or the top 9 cards of their deck for an item asset and adds it to their hand. Shuffle the deck if it's searched. 2 damage, 2 sanity on soak. Mythos phase, we got our first Doom on the new agenda. And then Daisy will draw. Rotting Remains. Revelation, test Will 3. For each point you fail by, take 1 horror. A sickening display of gore causes you to retch. You're glad this wasn't you. No kidding. So Daisy is base up 1, and that's where she'll test. -1 means Daisy is still clear, because that -1 brought her down to a will of 3, and it was a 3 test, so Daisy's clear on that. Zoe draws. Rotting Remains as well. Zoe is similarly up 1. I think Zoe will actually commit a guts to this, mostly because I'm interested in the card draw, so Zoe's up 3. That, and I really don't want taking Zoe unnecessary sanity, so Zoe's up 3. Cultist. Let's see what that is. Cultist is a -1. If you fail, take 1 horror. Obviously, Zoe didn't fail the test. And that guts is kind of a calculated gamble as well, because I'm kind of using knowledge again of what's coming, so I'm trying to dig for stuff I'm going to need for that point. So Zoe draws. Emergency Cash, 0 cost to play, gain 3 resources. We saw this earlier, so I should have gone through the flavor text at that point. You can never be too prepared. Indeed not. Right, so that brings us back into the investigation phase. I should be able to get them together to advance the act this round. But the way I want to do that is I actually want Zoe to be able to help Daisy out with that Frozen in Fear. So I think we'll have Zoe go first, and we'll start... let's start at the map, because that's where I'm hoping her turn will end up. Action 1 for Zoe is probably going to be an investigation. The only question is, am I going to commit Tetsuo to the test, or do I think we'll be fine without it? I think the way we'll do that is we'll test without the commit once, then for the second test, then if I need to test again, then I'll commit. But ideally, I want to be able to get Zoe I want to get that last clue off the attic, then get Zoe down to the hallway. Then my options are kind of open to me with that third action. So, Zoe is up 1. +1 gets Zoe the last clue off of the location, so that's perfect. Action 2 will bring Zoe down to the hallway. Then action 3, I think for action 3 we will spend the 3 resources to play out Tetsuo, mostly so we have some extra soak available to us. Then that will do it for Zoe. Daisy will spend 2 actions to move down to the hallway. And then for action 3, I think we're going to spend 3 resources to play out one of her shrivelings. So we'll get that out. We'll get the 4 charges for that. There are the 4 charges. 3, 4. And then remember, the move down here actually costs Daisy 2 action because she's still frozen in fear. But let's see if we can get rid of that here. So Zoe will commit her other guts to try to help Daisy with that, which will put Daisy up 3. +1 gets rid of Daisy's frozen in fear. And then Zoe gets to draw the card from that because of how Guts is worded. So we'll go ahead and flip that over for Daisy, and then Zoe will draw. Stunning Blow. Combat on commit on a skill. If the skill test is successful during an attack, automatically evade the attacked enemy. I'm very happy to see this, actually, and we'll see why probably in about 2 minutes as soon as we get through the upkeep phase. But enemy phase, nothing happens because there are still no enemies in play. So we'll reset everything here. And then we'll move back up top for the upkeep phase. Daisy gains 1 resource and goes to 2. Zoe will gain 1 and go to 4. Daisy draws. Dream Diary, untranslated. Will on commit. As an action, search your bonded cards for Essence of the Dream and add it to your hand. Reaction, after you succeed by 3 or more during a skill test to which Essence of the Dream is committed, record in your campaign log that you have interpreted the dreams. Takes up a hand slot. And then Daisy actually would gain her extra action if I'm able to play this out. Zoe draws. Zoe's Cross. I'm normally a lot happier to see this at the start of the game than now. 1 cost to play, Zoe's Cross, Symbol of Righteousness. 1 cost to play, 2 combat, and question mark on commit. Zoe Samurus deck only. Reaction, after an enemy becomes engaged with you, exhaust Zoe's Cross and spend 1 resource, deal 1 damage to that enemy, and it takes up the accessory slot. Now we're at end of round, so and we're in the hallway with the clues. So Zoe's going to spend 4 of her clues, and then Daisy's going to spend 2. There's a reason I'm spending the clues this way, but I'll explain that if it becomes relevant. So there are the 6 clues. Let's take a look at our new act. Act 2B. All right. Breaking the barrier. Using the barrel from the attic, you carry ice and snow from the cellar and hurl it at the barrier. The barrier sparks and shudders as it consumes the ice, then hisses and fades out of existence. The barrier blocking passage into the parlor has vanished. Reveal the parlor. Put the set-aside Lita Chandler into play in the parlor and spawn the set-aside Ghoul Priest in the hallway. Okay, so in order, I'm going to get a connecting arrow between the hallway and the parlor. Then we're going to reveal the parlor, so we'll find Shroud of 2, no clues. As an action, resign. This is too much for me. You run out the front door, fleeing in panic. While Lita Chandler is not controlled by a player, she gains action, parlay, test lore 4. If you succeed, take control of Lita Chandler. So let's take a look at Lita Chandler since she's going in there anyway. Lita Chandler, the Zealot. She'd be a 0 cost to play. While you control Lita Chandler, she gains... Each investigator at your location gains +1 combat. And as a reaction, when an investigator at your location successfully attacks a monster enemy, that investigator deals +1 damage, 3 health, and 3 sanity on soak. So she'll be joining the party in the parlor. And then we need to put the Ghoul Priest into play in the hallway. All right, the stats on here. 4, 5 per investigator, so 10, and 4. Humanoid, monster, ghoul, elite. Prey, highest combat. Hunter, retaliate. So hunter means that the enemy would move during the enemy phase if we try to move away from it. Retaliate means if an attack misses, it will attack instead. A figure in red wearing a bone mask. A figure in red robes wearing a bone mask. It gibbers and snarls before leaping to attack. Victory 2. 2 damage, 2 sanity on attack. And prey highest combat means that will actually engage with Zoe. Alright, so we've got all that figured out. So now let's take a look at our new agenda. Or our new act, I should say. Act 3A. What have you done? A woman with a torch stands in your parlor, a glimmer of hatred in her eyes. What have you done to my barrier? She screams, furious. Before you can answer, a ghastly wail sounds behind you, and a creature wearing robes and a deer skull mask tears through the wall, advancing toward you. Objective: if the ghoul priest is defeated, advance. So, never mind the fact that this crazy woman tore into Daisy's house, put up a barrier to try to seal us in. She's the one griping at us over her precious barrier. Really, Lita? Mythos phase. Doom on the agenda goes up to 2. We're still in we're not in a huge hurry there. We need 7 Doom to advance that. So Daisy will draw. Ancient Evils. Revelation, place 1 Doom on the current agenda. This effect can cause the current agenda to advance. Dark forces stir against you. If you do not act quickly, a sinister plot will be fulfilled. This set, I would say, is probably one of the most feared encounter sets in the game. Because what it forces you to do is it essentially forces you to redo the first 2 steps of the Mythos phase, where you put another Doom up on the agenda, and then check the Doom threshold. So this last clause, this effect can cause the current agenda to advance. If you've ever heard anybody talk about the Ancient Evils clause, that's the clause they're talking about, because normally, when Doom gets added to a card in play, it doesn't cause the agenda to advance. But if it specifies that on the card, then it would cause the agenda to advance. So that's why that set is so feared. And then Zoe draws. Obscuring Fog. Revelation, attach to your location, limit 1 per location. Attached location gets +2 Shroud. Forced, after attached location is successfully investigated, discard Obscuring Fog. Given our current situation, that's actually a treachery that does literally nothing to us. Because the hallway is a Shroud of 1, which brings it up to 3, but the only reason we'd care about it is if we had clues there, which could become relevant if we get Daisy defeated there, because she would drop her clues at that location, and Zoe wouldn't be able to pick them up in a million years, but hopefully that won't happen. So, slight ramble aside, we are back into the investigation phase, and I think we'll start the round with Daisy, and we'll start at the map. At this point, let me tip the camera down no, we don't need to tip it down too much. At this point, I think the plan is simplicity personified. Daisy needs to come down to the parlor and get Lita, then bring her back so Zoe can start hacking away. So for action 1, Daisy will move down to the parlor. Action 2, she'll parlay to try to take control of Lita. So right now she's at 5, 6, 7. She's up 3. And we're not going to bother with a commit on this one. Yeah, Daisy's up 3. A 0 gives Daisy control of Lita, so we're all going according to plan. And right now, Lita's a story asset, so she won't cause slot pressure to get rid of Milan, I don't think. But don't quote me on that. Action 3, Daisy will move back up and mission accomplished. So Daisy has gotten Lita, and now Zoe can start hacking away. So for action 1, Zoe will attack the Ghoul Priest. I'm not going to move back down to her play area. So Zoe right now is going to use the machete on the Ghoul Priest. She's at 4, 5 because of the machete, 6 because of Lita. Then we'll commit... Actually, we're up 2. I think that's probably a fine place to test. So, also, Zoe should have gained a resource after becoming engaged with the Ghoul Priest. So, Zoe will attack up 2. -2 puts actually 3 damage on the Ghoul Priest because we have Lita there as well. And the Ghoul Priest is a monster. So yeah, Zoe does 1, 2, 3 damage. So we'll get a 3 out for the Ghoul Priest. Action 2 will run that back. So Zoe is still up 2. Skull, as we saw earlier, is minus X, where X is the number of ghouls at the location. It's actually 1, but Zoe will actually be able to do another 3 damage, and I'm going to grab one of my special health tokens because I don't often get to use these. These, if I remember correctly, are also from orbits. So we've got a 5... and a 10. We'll only need the 5 side, though, because right now Zoe is... Alright, so that's 6 damage on the Ghoul Priest. Then action 3, we'll run it back with a machete, so we're still up 2. -1 puts another 3 damage on the Ghoul Priest. So we only have 1 health left on the Ghoul Priest, but that's all 3 of Zoe's actions. So that will do it for the investigation phase. Now we get to have a full enemy phase, so I'll detail how the enemy phase actually works. So hunter enemies move, which the Ghoul Priest would... So the Ghoul Priest would move if it wasn't already engaged with an investigator, but he's engaged with Zoe. So after the hunter enemies move, each investigator resolves their enemy attacks. So the Ghoul Priest does 2 damage and 2 sanity to Zoe, except we can assign that to Tetsuo to have him take the damage. So that means he gets defeated because we assigned the 2 damage and the 2 sanity to him. Then looking at Tetsuo's reaction ability will actually trigger at that point. So we'll have... Who do we want to have go into their deck? I think Daisy actually got the one item I'd be potentially interested in. I don't think anything's really relevant right now, so I guess we'll just have Daisy search, because why not? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Remember, we can only take items with this. So first card up. Forbidden Tome, untranslated. That's an item. We can take it, but we're not going to get anywhere near that, this scenario. Higher Education, which is not an item, so we can't take that. Eureka would be welcome, but not an item. Dr. Milan, not an item, and already out anyway. The Necronomicon, item, but we'll probably tell it to get bent. Scroll of Prophecies, also an item. Drawn to the Flame, not an item. Hawkeye Folding Camera, it's an item, and I can tell that from the keywords toward the middle of the card. Probably not particularly relevant. And Medical Texts, which is also relevant. So these 4 cards are getting shuffled back into the deck. I'll put those on top. So which of these do I want? I think the way I'm going to decide is... I think what I'm looking for most right now is probably will commits. Because my plan right now, my plan for the next turn is to play the Dream Diary out and then try to have Daisy unlock Essence of the Dream, be able to upgrade Dream Diary during the first upgrades video. So based on that, I definitely don't want the Necronomicon because that's a weakness anyway. So if I'm looking for will commits, I don't want medical texts. I think I will take the... Actually, all of these are one will commit. So I'll just take the Hawkeye folding camera and plan on committing that. But we'll take a quick look at that anyway. Give that a cut. And we'll take a look at Hawkeye folding camera. Costs 2 to play, 1 will on commit. As a reaction, after the last clue is discovered from your location, place 1 resource from the token pool on this card as evidence. Limit once per game at each location. While Hawkeye folding camera has 1 or more evidence, you get +1 will. 2 or more gets +1 lore. 3 or more gets +1 sandy, and it takes up a hand slot. Alright, so that's everything done in the enemy phase. So we'll go ahead and reset everything, reset our actions. And then I'll meet you guys back up top, but I need a new battery for the camera. Daisy gains 1 resource and goes to 3. Zoe gains 1 and goes to 6. Daisy draws. Drawn to the flame anyway. 0 cost to play, lore and will on commit. Draw the top card of the encounter deck, then discover 2 clues at your location. I'll go through the flavor text if I actually play it, but I most likely won't be this scenario. Zoe draws. Another enchanted blade, which we probably don't need anyway. Mythos phase, Doom on the agenda goes up to 4. Daisy draws. Obscuring fog, limit 1 per location. So this actually gets discarded, which means Daisy ducks 1. And then Zoe draws. Grasping hands, revelation, test agility 3. For each point you fail by, take 1 damage. We saw this earlier. And it caused Zoe problems because the Empress 3 will kick in once again, so Zoe will be down 2. Zoe's got no agility to help with that. Does Daisy? Even if she does, it might not be worth trying to. 3, 4... the best we could do is get her down 1 and hope for a pull, and that's not somewhere I like to be. Plus, Zoe isn't... Even if Zoe takes the full 3 damage, the only way she'd be in danger of getting defeated by that is if she takes a retaliate from the Ghoul Priest, and the plan is for her not to take a retaliate. So Zoe's just going to test down 2 and take this one on the chin. -2 means Zoe takes it on the chin once again. So that actually sets her modified skill value to -1, which will reset up to 0 because you can never go below 0 in this game. So Zoe will take another 3 damage, which basically means she could miss once on the Ghoul Priest and then not get defeated by the retaliate. That's it for the Mythos phase. Investigation phase now, and let's move down to Daisy's play area. This is where I'm going to see if I can put a somewhat crazy plan into motion. So, action 1, Daisy will spend 2 resources to play out her Dream Diary. So remember, as an action, I can search my bonded cards for Essence of the Dream and add it to my hand. and as a reaction, after I succeed by 3 or more, during a skill test to which Essence of the Dream is committed, recording your campaign log that you've interpreted the dreams. So as her tome action, I will actually go into my bonded cards. Of course, I have no fingernails to do this. Oh, I don't need them, thankfully. And I'll grab up Essence of the Dream. So we'll take a look at that once I get everything back organized. There we are. All right, so Essence of the Dream is a 2 question mark commit bonded with Dream Diary. When Essence of the Dream would enter your discard pile or be shuffled into your deck, instead set Essence of the Dream aside out of play with your bonded cards. All right, so we've used her first action and her tome action. Action 2 will be to engage the Ghoul Priest away from Zoe, because I don't want to hit Zoe right now. Because remember, we can take 1 hit from either friendly fire or retaliate, but I don't want to take a chance on that. So action 3, we'll use a charge of Shriveling, which changes her into using will instead of combat for the attack. So right now she's at 4, she's up 1. And we're going to do a lot of committing just so I can try to get up an obscene amount. So right now I'm even. I'll start with Essence of the Dream to go up 2. Daisy's Tote Bag to go up 4. Hawkeye Folding Camera to go up 5. And Drawn to the Flame to go up 6. So the reason I'm overcommitting this, actually there are 3 reasons why I'm overcommitting this much. First is I want to make sure only the tentacle can fail me on this one. The second is I want to be able to be at a level high enough that assuming I pull the worst token out of the bag, it's a -2. There are a couple of -2s in the bag. And then the other reason is, so basically, even if I pull that out, I'll still be able to unlock Dream Diary. And the third is probably just overkill, but I want to make sure I get this scenario done. So with that, let me just go back through everything. So Daisy's base will is 3. St. Hubert's Key brings her up to 4. 5-6 from Essence of the Dream. 7-8 from Daisy's Tote Bag, because as you look here, it only gives us the will and the wild card icon on that. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then Hawkeye Folding Camera and Drawn to the Flame each have a 1 will icon on them. So that's where I'm getting up to 10 to 4, which means Daisy's up 6, essentially trying to do 3 damage to this. It's trying to do 3 damage to the Ghoul Priest. So, of course, the one token that I say can fail me, of course, fails me. Fantastic. So the tentacle also deals Daisy 1 horror. So we get that. Then Retaliate actually hits Daisy for 2 and 2. So I'll just put that on. I'll put the 2 horror on. Put the 2 horror and 1 of the damage on Milan. Daisy will have to take the 1 damage herself. So Milan will eat it, which is very unfortunate. Then Essence of the Dream goes back to her bonded cards. Let's see. So action 1 will display Essence of the Dream or Dream Diary. Tome action to go get it. Action 2 to engage. Action 3 to attack. So that plan kind of blew up in my face. That'll do it for Daisy. Now let's move over to Zoe. Alright, so getting cute with the Dream Diary clearly didn't work. Action 1 for Zoe. She'll engage the Ghoul Priest back over, gaining a resource going up to 7. Action 2 will hit it with the machete, so 4, 5, 6. And we'll use the Stunning Blow to go up 3. But that should be enough to take out the Ghoul Priest. So Zoe is up 3. -1 does take out the Ghoul Priest, thankfully. So that will move to the victory display. Alright. So my plan with the Dream Diary blew up in my face, but we still got done with it, so... The Ghoul Priest is defeated, which means we advance. Defending the home. When the robed creature falls, the fiendish swarm burrows back into the ground, and the chaos of the house quiets. But the stranger in your parlor doesn't seem relieved. You broke my seal that was set to trap the ghouls within. She raises her torch. Now, we must take more direct measures and burn this hell pit to the ground. The lead investigator must decide, choose one. Come on, focus. Alright, the lead investigator must decide, choose one. It was never much of a home. Burn it down. Resolution 1. This hell pit is my home. No way are we burning it. Resolution 2. Daisy, how much of a home is it really right now? We've had ghouls invade it. And yeah, just all kinds of crazy stuff. So, I think to borrow a line from Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening when you pick up the last dungeon item, burn, baby, burn. So let's move back up top for Resolution 1. We'll turn it over to our handsome narrator once again for Resolution 1.
Resolution 1. You nod and allow the red-haired woman to set the walls and floors of your house ablaze. The fire spreads quickly, and you run out the front door to avoid being caught in the inferno. From the sidewalk, you watch as everything you own is consumed by flames. Come with me, the woman says. You must be told of the threat that lurks below. Alone, we are surely doomed. But together, we can stop it. In your campaign log, record that your house is burned to the ground. The lead investigator earns the lead Enchanter card and may include it in his or her deck. This card does not count toward that investigator's deck size. The lead investigator suffers 1 mental trauma from watching his or her home become a smoldering ruin. Each investigator earns experience equal to the victory X value of each card in the victory display. Remember to add eligible locations to the victory display. Each investigator earns 2 bonus experience as he or she gains insight into the hidden world of the mythos.
Alright, so I'm just going to make some notes here. So our house burned to the ground. That will become relevant. That'll become relevant for next week's scenario, but I won't detail how. Daisy's earned Lita Chandler. We don't noted the mental trauma, and our victory display turned out to be 1 because we emptied the cellar, 2 because we emptied the attic, 4 because we defeated the Ghoul Priest, 5 for the Flesh Eater. +2 for the experience into the hidden inside of the mythos brings us up to a total of 7 experience. So that will do it for this playthrough of The Gathering. I have a feeling it's going to be later this afternoon that we're going to go ahead and do upgrades just because I've got so much going on this week. Then Wednesday we're going to do another play-along of Welcome To, and I'll detail how that will work in that video. Thursday night, there's a night you don't hear often on the channel. Thursday night, I'm actually going to be live with ID Jester as we play Gaia Project on Board Game Arena. So I'll put a link to his channel in the description down below. So feel free to come over, say hey, and just hang out with us for a little bit. And then next week we'll have the second scenario of the campaign, the Midnight Masks. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.